Namaste and welcome, my beautiful members, to Mama Moon, Understanding Your Moon Sign. Now, we all mostly know our sun sign, right? The sign that's related to our birthday. And sometimes we know our rising sign, right? That sign that's on the first house cusp that has so much to do with the way we look and the way we see the world and the way the world sees us. But understanding your moon is so vital to understanding your own emotional body, how you react to things internally. It has everything to do with nurturing and mothers and women, and it is the changeable part of you. And so it is vital that you know and understand your moon sign so that you can work with your emotional self. We cannot really have an understanding of our moon as far as the esoteric astrological moon without looking at the moon as an astronomical object. So you don't have to be into astrology or even astronomy to really pay attention to the moon and its cycles. It is the brightest and largest object in the night sky, and it plays a very important role working with the waters of the earth, causing the tides, that rhythm that's been with us for thousands of years. Humans have used the cycles of the moon for planting, for harvesting. It also, if you look at it in a technical sense, and I got this online, it makes the earth more livable by moderating the planet's wobble and helps keep the climate stable. It stabilizes the tilt of our orbit due to its gravitational pull and does influence seasonal changes, the tides, and influences all living things. I often joke, all you have to do is ask any school teacher or emergency room nurse, does the moon affect humans? And the answer is yes. But the moon esoterically is, again, about the mind and emotions, the way you feel about things. It has a lot to do with your behaviors and temperament, your mood or moodiness. It has a lot to do with instincts and intuition as well. We look to the moon astrologically to tell us about our mothers or the nurturing parent. It may or may not have been the mother. We look to the moon in our chart to see where we might have issues or support from women or about women. It has everything to do with nurturing. It is the natural ruler of the fourth house, which is home, and also the natural ruler of the sign of Cancer. And so understanding not just where your moon is in your chart by house, and also understanding the filter through which your moon comes through, which is the moon sign. We also want to see how your moon is aspected, as well as some other important connections to the moon and other planets. A lot of understanding your moon sign has to do with knowing which zodiacal sign it is in and whether it prefers to be in there. Like I said, its favorite home is Cancer, but it's also really very happy, they call it exalted, in the sign of Taurus. Now, when we have a moon in the sign of Capricorn, it is considered to be detriment, difficulty. And if the moon is in Scorpio, it is considered to be in its fall. Those just mean that it's a much more difficult moon. And when you think about it, it makes sense, right? So the caretaker sign of Cancer, the moon likes to be there. It likes to be caretaking. It likes the water element. It likes to nurture. It likes to be in touch with its emotions and intuition. And in Taurus, it's that's a very caring sign for the moon. It's a very stabilizing sign for the moon. It helps to ground the moon versus the harsh energy of Cancer, of Capricorn, which is a little more difficult for the moon, ruled by Saturn. So, the opposite energy. It's very, Capricorn stands across the sky from Cancer. So it's more considered to be the paternal or authority figure energy, whether that, figure was male or female matters not. It's more the harsh energy, and that's why the moon does not particularly like to be in that sign, standing across the sky from where she prefers to be. And then, of course, in Scorpio, that intensity of Scorpio is just a little too much for the moon, and can sometimes indicate difficulties, for sure. And then, of course, looking at the house, where is it located? If the moon is in the first house, you might tend to have what we call a moon face, a rounder face or bigger eyes. Often a Cancer rising personality or someone with the moon in the first house may have those features. Moon in the second house really makes your finances and your emotional self tied together. The moon in the third house really makes communication a deep value for you and may make it so that you feel like you need to nurture or care for siblings or neighbors. A moon in the fourth house, well, that's going to be a little bit more of a happy location. It tends to prefer to be there. And that's the house of home, right? Home is where the heart is. The fifth house gives a value for fun, joy, pleasure, games, and perhaps a real strong desire, I would think, to have children. In the sixth house, the moon located there can be a little rough. It might be the symbol of someone who is involved in the healing arts in some way, who feels like they need to be of service emotionally to the world, and maybe has their own inner kind of their inner feelings, their deepest feelings, very caught up in their daily work, kind of wearing their heart on their sleeve, so to speak. Moon in the seventh, well, that's going to make partnerships very important, partnerships of all kinds. Eighth house moon, very deep, very spiritual, very connected, maybe seeking solace and comfort through sexual experiences and through cosmic experiences. Moon in the ninth very much could be someone who wants to nurture, help, or care for people by teaching them, by guiding them, or it can bring a deep love of philosophy. Moon in the 10th house, well, this really brings your nurturing self out into the public. This would be perhaps a job or a role that you feel like you need to caretake in some way. This could be a doctor or a nurse or something like that, a profession that feels like it has to tend to people's feelings, a psychiatrist perhaps even. When you look at the 11th house moon, very much tied up in what's going on with friends, with groups of people. This could be a moon that really has the desire to help others or to lead others in some ways, could feel very, very connected, attached, almost too connected to friends or friendships, really absorbing their energies. Could have a very strong desire nature towards achieving goals. And then that 12th house moon, boy, that can be a tough one. 12th house moon, it's hidden. It's like your own emotional body is hidden from you. It can make feelings very difficult, make emotions difficult. Could be a lot of karma related to the mother, helping the mother in some way. The next step, once you realize what sign your moon is in and what house, where is it located, is to look at the aspects of the moon. And I typically stay with the majors, conjunction, which means it's touching. And I would say with the moon, you probably want to look at anything that's within probably 5 to 6 degrees. Some people might say closer, but I would definitely look at 5 to 6 degree orb to other planets and consider that to be a conjunction. You would look, of course, at the trines, the flows, the beautiful blue triangles. You would look at the sextiles, the little blue stars, which is a minor blessing aspect. You would look at the squares, the red squares, which are difficult angles to the moon, and also to the oppositions where the moon is standing across the sky from something that looks like the little red barbells. You may have seen that in your chart. Looking at how the moon is aspected really lets us know how that moon is attuned. Now, of course, conjunctions are going to be the strongest energy. And because the moon moves so quickly, it really is influenced very strongly by any other planet it would touch. Now, of course, the slower moving planets exert more energy. So let's say your moon is touching both Jupiter and Uranus, for example. Well, that Uranian energy is going to have the upper hand because it moves slower. You would also want to look at the conjunctions to see if they are applying, as in the planets are moving towards each other, like what's moving towards the moon to touch it. Well, that means the energy is building, or has it already touched the moon in the chart and it's moving away from it, which is separating energy. That tends to make the aspect a little less strong. So you might want to look at those very basic elements. And with all of those, I would look more at a 3-degree orb versus the conjunctions, which I would consider tighter. But look at them yourself and kind of see. Look at your own chart. Say, hey, how do you think I experienced this opposition? Or how has this square, how have I experienced conflict between these two different energies, the moon and whatever it is squaring? And then, of course, you want to look at it as it compares to the energy of your sun and your ascendant. For example, you may have this gregarious Sagittarius sun, and then you've got this somewhat detached Aquarian moon. Those are very different energies, right? Look at the element. It's fire, it's air. Fire in Sagittarius, the air of Aquarius, right? How does that move together? Start looking at some of those things. And then, of course, also look at how it vibes with your ascendant, the sign on your first house cusp. That also can help you kind of see how it flows. I would always look to see how the moon interacts with either Saturn or Jupiter, because I feel like those are like the father energies. And so you want to see how they interact. And you could also look at how it interacts with all the other planets. So take your time as you're looking through your chart to understand how that moon is influencing other things in your chart. Now let us consider some key words related to the qualities of the moon. Think of sensitivity, changeability, or adaptability. It's somewhat cold and it is reflective, right? You don't see always the moon. You see the sun being reflected in the moon. So it's almost like a mirror. It tends to be representative of a feminine energy, a nurturing energy, a fluctuation. It's considered to be very receptive, domestic, related to mothers and mothering, again, women. Somewhat imaginative, can also be shy, nostalgic, emotional, and moody. Moody moon. Now, it takes about 28 days to go one way around the Earth, right? So, of course, very quick, very changeable, and spends about 2.5 days in a sign. And is considered one of the luminaries. The moon and the sun are considered the luminaries versus being a planet per se. Again, ruler of Cancer, that's its favorite sign. Taurus is the exaltation. And then we've got the detriment in Capricorn and the fall, the really difficult placement in Scorpio. If we think about the higher vibrational qualities of the moon or the light of the moon, you can be adaptable, receptive, careful and wise, nurturing, intuitive, sympathetic, affectionate. And in its shadow qualities, back to that moodiness, can be very attached to things or security conscious. Can be very impressionable, very much absorbing the energies of other people or their thoughts or opinions. It can give you quite a bit of prejudice or feeling like anyone who is an outsider doesn't belong. And it can bring negative levels of hypersensitivity, both to your environment and mentally, right? That impressionability. And, your moon and the way it's aspected impacts your mother and your relationship to your mother or your interlinked parent. Again, it doesn't have to be a female. It has a lot to do with family and how you feel about your family, and also that sense of belonging, whether it relates not just to your family, immediate family, extended family, but also your country and your home life in general. Physically, the moon has everything to do with hereditary traits and things that you have inherited. It has everything to do with the fluids of the body, and in fact, the moon impacts the fluids of the body very strongly. It rules over the stomach, the kidneys, the liver, and the breasts, and also the sympathetic nervous system, because your emotional body has such a strong impact upon the nervous system. Your moon will show you how well you can adapt to change. It will show you by house and by sign where a lot of the changes will occur in your life. It indicates a lot about your relationships with women and your mother. It indicates emotional reactions. And then a couple things to look at. One, you want to look at the house and sign where your moon is located, but then you also want to look and see where Cancer is in your chart. And then you want to look and see where, whatever sign your moon is in, you want to see what the ruler of that sign is. So let's say, for example, you have a moon in Aries, then you want to look and see where Mars is in your chart, and that may have a little impact on what's going on with your moon. Now, when you're looking for your prenatal lunar conjunction, I have a little example here for you to look at. And this is not a natal chart, this is just a chart, but I want you to take a look at this chart and see where the moon is. Do you see it up there? It's in the 8th house in Libra. So I want you to take a look before that. Think of the orbit of the planets and the moon moving counterclockwise, and I want you to see what would be the planet that it would have touched right before the chart was cast. And if you look down there, it's quite far from the planet, but it's down there, and it touched Uranus before the chart was cast. So before the baby was born, that prenatal lunar conjunction was with that Uranian energy. And you see it down there in that house. It really empowers that moon and makes it a lot more of a rebel. This person could feel like an outcast within their home, or their home environment might be very unusual. So you might want to take a look at your chart and see where that what that prenatal lunar conjunction was for you and how that tones your moon. The element of the moon, as you know, is water, and the colors associated with the moon tend to be gray, silver, and white. If you're looking for stones that honor and support your moon, we can use selenite. Selenite's wonderful. Pearl is also a wonderful stone that's very useful for supporting lunar energy, and crystal as well. And again, the rulership, women, nurturing, home, emotionality, and security. How to attune to the moon? Well, you should celebrate the moon. I think it's one of the beginner level things to do in astrology is to begin to follow the moon. You want to observe the new moons, which is a time of new beginnings, a time for initiating things. And in fact, I would suggest ritualizing at the new moons anything that you wish to launch or begin in that area of life. Full moons are more about completion, about endings, about cord cutting and letting go and releasing. And so they should be observed as well. And then understanding whether the moon is waxing, which is getting bigger, which means it's just been new and it's moving towards full. So there's almost like a beginning and an ending within that 28 days. Or once it's full and then it's waning. And you can even observe this, the ancients, but even just your grandparents observed this with their planting rituals, even with cutting your hair. It's very interesting. I've really paid attention to if I get my hair trimmed when the moon is waning, it slows down its growth. And if I get it done when it's waxing, it increases its growth. So it depends on what you want. For example, lettuce, we plant lettuce when the moon is waning so that it will grow slow and not bolt. But things that you want to grow rapidly, like perhaps corn or tomatoes, you would plant during the waxing moon. Be sure to check the other videos in the YouTube library because I have quite a few on celebrating the moons. And then also take note of eclipses. Eclipses are really intense. We like to just say like a new moon or a full moon on steroids. They're volume up moons. I do not necessarily recommend strong or powerful rituals during those times because the energy is just so strong. And so when you have a solar eclipse, that is a new moon. It's a new beginning, but it's a big new beginning. And it could be quite destructive. There are times to be careful. And then the lunar eclipse, well, that's a full moon, and that's a releasing, a letting go. But again, it's the dial gets turned up hugely on the energetics of it. And so they're time to be a little bit more adaptable to change, a little bit more careful and cautious, and definitely a time to know where they're falling in your chart, how they're influencing you, and also to know where they're visible, what part of the earth they are visible from, because that also shows you where they're going to exert the most energy. So let's step into each of the moon signs. So if you have not gotten your chart yet, you should absolutely pause the video and pull up your chart to see what your moon is, so that we can look and see if you are in the highest vibration of your moon sign, or if you're kind of getting engaged in shadow work in the shadow of your moon. And I know a lot of people don't like the whole high vibe, low vibe. They don't like to put it in a negative light, but it's really important that we use our emotional bodies as the superpowers that they are, and not to cause damage to ourselves or to others with our emotions. Now, here is a quick listing of the zodiacal glyphs. These are the glyphs so that you can take a look at your moon and understand which symbols are which, so you can kind of decode your chart if you don't have a listing. So just take a quick glance there, and then let's dive in. So we start at the beginning of the zodiac, the Aries moon. I personally have an Aries moon. I do not recommend it. It was pretty tough growing up. Remember that you're pretty much in your emotional body as a young person, I would say probably till right around puberty, or your Saturn opposition, which is around the age of 14. Could even be just right around the age of 7 when you have your first Saturn square. But watch and observe, go back in time, or watch and observe children around you and really see if they're in their moon sign more as young people. The positive or light, the high vibrational of Aries moon is their passion and enthusiasm. They feel things so strongly. They let their heart be their guide. They let their passions choose their pathway. But the shadow is that it can be very adolescent and impetuous, very angry, very bold, very harsh, and just overwhelmed by the fire of emotion. Now, of course, the moon loves to be in Taurus. It is a cuddly moon for sure. And in its positive aspect, it's a very dedicated, enduring moon, just like Taurus people. They're very loyal. And so it's a very loyal moon. Very physical moon, very much love, support, and security shown through hugs and kisses and snuggles and touch. And in its shadow, though, can be that Taurus ability to hold a grudge forever and ever. Amen. It can be an incredibly stubborn moon. So it can be a little tricky. You definitely need to know if you have a Taurus moon. You can overstay in relationships. And you can also, with a Taurus anything, there's a point where they have given all they're going to give and they are done. And you should make sure when dealing with your Taurus moon people that you never push them to that point. Gemini moon. Now, Gemini moon is a very fun and flirty type of moon. They are pretty changeable, very talkative. They want to share all their emotions with you. They want to let you know exactly how they're feeling. They could swing pretty wildly with that duality of Gemini back and forth. And it does give a certain amount of adaptability to them because they're so changeable themselves. It also brings, I think, a little bit of a childlike joy, a Gemini moon does. But, of course, the shadow is the other twin. The other twin of the Gemini moon is can be very, very high highs, very low lows. You might experience them as being very unstable emotionally, swinging wildly between the two poles, right? Happy, sad, happy, sad. You can also, a Gemini moon can be quite manipulative. They're very mercurial beings. So there's that element that comes in that makes the emotional body very mental. And so that mind-body connection can be either useful or painful for the Gemini moon. Now, of course, Cancer, right, likes to be there, very nurturing in its highest qualities, very intuitive, very sensitive, very understanding. You talk to a Cancer moon person, you feel like they really hear you, they really feel you, they understand. In fact, that can be one of the problems too, though. The shadow can be, they can really absorb the pain of other beings, not unlike any water sign, but even more so. They can be also very indecisive. Think of the crab kind of waffling back and forth. And that sensitivity can be both a superpower and a Achilles heel. That feeling the pain of the world, especially the pain of family. There is nobody in the zodiac who would be, you would more say this about the whole, like, no one's as happy as their unhappiest child. Oh my goodness, Cancer moon, right? um, and sometimes they can be very almost aggressive in their nurturing, and they have to always watch. They can sometimes end up in love relationships. This can also happen with a Cancer Venus too, but they can end up in love relationships where they end up parenting the person instead of being in a true partnership. Leo moon. Now, Leo moon, I mean, oh, yeah, just so passionate, so outgoing. This is a moon that really wants to share their feelings. They want to be seen. They need their pain to be recognized. They need their pleasure to be recognized. They absolutely need to be seen. And that can be both the light and the shadow, right? Because they can often, if they're not feeling like they're getting the attention they need, they can be very manipulative in order to get it. They can be very dramatic. They can be very difficult. They can very much retreat into their den, so to speak, because they feel stung or hurt. They're much more sensitive moon than you would think because of that, kind of front of the house Leo energy. You might think, oh, well, they're not that sensitive, but the truth is they're very easily wounded. And in the positive sense, they can be extremely intuitive, like really intuitive, something that you wouldn't necessarily think of a fire sign. Now, the Virgo personality, the Virgo moon is a tough one, okay? It might not be detriment or fall, but Virgo moon is a tough one. Why? Well, because it's so analytical, it's so critical, it's so detail oriented, it's so show me the numbers instead of show me your feelings. It can be good in some ways because it's very discerning, very service oriented, want to help. It could be definitely great for, kind of picking up on what people need in order to feel whole again. They could make a wonderful position for a therapist or something like that, for sure. But that shadow of criticism or cruelty or perfection, wanting, the Virgo moon mother wanting her children to be perfect, the Virgo moon child wanting their mother to be perfect. There's no perfect people. There's no perfect humans. That's not how we roll. And then, of course, there's the shadow of martyrdom. I bring that up whenever we talk about Virgo personalities, but that Virgo moon can also martyr themselves. That is absolutely a shadow of that Virgo moon. I would say also it's important with a Virgo moon personality to be the people around them to be somewhat fastidious. That's a way of showing love for them, to be clean, to be organized. Libra moon. Libra moon is all about being social. They're very much about balance and justice and peace and fairness. If things are unfair, you will see your Libra moon lose it in a way that they normally don't. Normally, they're very even keel emotionally. They weigh out their options, they weigh out their odds. They may be somewhat indecisive, but typically very calm, very steady moon. In its shadow, they can be very fake or manipulative. Social climbers, it can be very much like, ooh, do you know so and so? Oh, well, then, like, let me chat you up, that kind of thing. And sometimes people also can read a Libra moon as fake just because they are that nice. So that's something to always watch out for. But Libra moon, definitely a very harmonious, typically harmonious and lovely moon. Now, Scorpio moon. Scorpio moon, very, very tough placement. I have, of all the readings that I've done, with people with Scorpio moon, probably only came across maybe 2 or 3 that had a decent relationship with their interlinked parent. Most of them had pretty tragic relationships with the mother in particular, or have had to do an enormous amount of work either on themselves or with the parent in order to kind of heal some of the damage and problems and struggle. Because the Scorpio energy is dark, it's heavy, it's deep, it's death and regeneration, right? And so the moon, it has a little sensitivity to those types of things. Now, it can be a very incisive, inquisitive moon that's not afraid of other people's feelings, that's not afraid of their own feelings. Can be a very highly intuitive moon, as all the water sign moons are. But the shadow, extreme behaviors, extreme darkness, getting really in the depths of heavy mental constructs, emotional constructs. Either one of them can bring them down, and it's hard to emerge from the muck. They can be a vindictive moon, a punishing moon. Anything in Scorpio plays a long game. And so the moon in Scorpio can really play that long game of emotional manipulation or retribution even. So a little bit of a tough placement with the Scorpio moon. Sagittarius moon. So the moon in sunny Sagittarius. This is an adventuresome moon. This is a moon that tends to be pretty joyful, pretty buoyant, pretty just kind of like flying by the seat of their pants, like, let's go do it. Let's have the experience. Let's feel the things. With the gift of a little bit of age, it is a very wise moon, a very savvy moon, a very worldly moon. But it has to always avoid the shadow of being impatient, being in a big rush for things, being careless, disregarding other people's feelings. It can be quite fiery, quite passionate, and not stick around for the results. It's kind of wanting the next new thing, wanting the next new experience, and it can end up kind of addicted to that emotional roller coaster, looking for the next high or the next low. Now your Capricorn moon. Capricorn moon is, again, a difficult placement. Now, it is a dedicated, determined, and devoted moon. So this is a moon that appreciates hard work, that sometimes, just doesn't get as touchy-feely as some moons might. Could be a little cold, could be a little harsh, could be a little calculating, could be a little bit manipulative as well, because it really does have for its value system, it really values power. It can really get obsessed with money, security, things like that can be very much at the forefront of someone with a Capricorn moon. Aquarius moon. Now, I think this is also a somewhat difficult placement because it's such a detached, analytical type of moon. It's not as emotional. It's definitely more scientific in its approach. And often people with Aquarius moon come off as cold, and people think they don't care when they do care. They're really caring about you, or they're really concerned about something, but it just doesn't come off like that. They don't read that way. They're not typically touchy-feely. They're not the ones that if they're showing you that they're crying, which they're not going to want to show you anyways, but if they are, they're not going to want you to reach out and grab them and pull them in for a big old hug. That's not what they want. They want physical contact like that on their own terms, okay? It is not a huggy moon, except when they want it, when they want a hug. But you need to let them initiate that. I've had more than one client who is dealing with somebody who has an Aquarian moon and thinks that this person doesn't really care about them at all. And so making sure that you have good communication. Remember, it's an air sign. Everybody thinks because of the symbol and because of the word aqua that it's a water sign, but it's not. It's an air sign, and the ancient ruler of it was Saturn. and is Saturn. I mean, still there's that Saturnian element with Aquarius for sure. So the shadow is that indifference and harshness, and sometimes they actually don't care, right? And they don't not care, or they don't care with the strength and power of detachment that not all of us have. Now, sometimes that can be useful, but sometimes it can sting a little for the people that love them. And then finally, the moon in Pisces. Well, this is a very absorbent moon, a very porous moon. This is a moon of somebody who's not all here on the earth plane. This is a moon that is half in the spiritual realm. And so very, very porous, very, very sensitive, very, very psychic typically. You definitely have to look at the aspects with your Pisces moon, and you have to protect your Pisces moon. Now, this Pisces moon child could, really wear their heart on their sleeves, be prone to tantrums, crying, etc. And that can really bother some people, right? That erratic, kind of super emotional, hyper emotional sense. Again, kind of swinging wildly. But a lot of it has to do with their environment. They very, very much sensitive to their environment or whatever they take in for sure. And so understanding their own psychic abilities, their own spiritual connection, and their hypersensitivity, once they learn to work with that, well, they can absolutely turn that sensitivity into a superpower. So then looking at the 12 areas of life, the houses, I've got a brief overview here of the houses. So that you can take a look and see. I've already run through the moon here, but feel free to pause the video and take a look and see if you can see your own moon in your chart and the area of life that it's in. How has that shown up for you? You might wish to do a little bit of journaling, a little bit of introspection on how that area of life has been influenced by the sensitivity of your moon being there. How has it shown up for you? How have women shown up for you in that area of life? Well, how does that area of life relate to your mother? How does it relate to you as someone who nurtures anything, whether it's, your pet hamster or your dog or your children or your spouse, right? We all nurture in some way. Look at your fourth house. What's the sign on your fourth house? How does that relate to things? And where's the ruler of the sign of your moon? So again, let's say you've got that Sagittarius moon. Where's your Jupiter? How does that influence things? Look at that connection and see what that extra layer of information can offer for you. So thank you very much for joining me today. I hope that you found this useful and helpful. If you have any questions, I want you to please email me, jill@newitastrology.com. I am absolutely here for you, happy to answer any questions you might have about your moon, about how to bless and be blessed by connecting to the moon on a daily basis. And I wish you a wonderful exploration of your moon. Namaste, my friends. Bye.